Afternoon session, human-machine in communication, interaction. We actually called it communication. And the first speaker is Dana Mazia, right? Yeah. Okay. Dana Mazia is a data strategist and governance leader committed to keeping public web data accessible and responsibly governed. She serves on the steering committee of the Alliance for Responsible Data Collection, ARDC, and helped publish the first cross-industry standards for responsible web data collection. Through ARDC, she contributes to IETF framework recommendations on responsible access to public web information. As general manager of the Bright Initiative, the Data and AI for Good arm of Bright Data, she leads partnership with more than 800 NGOs and public bodies and regularly lectures on data ethics. A lawyer and Israeli bar member, her fellowship goal is to co-develop implementable standards and assurance pathway for responsibly sourced public data.
Hi, everyone. Great afternoon. Thanks for joining us back, and thank you, Guy, for inviting me. As you just heard, I'm coming from a little bit of like a different background, and my session probably will bring a little bit of different perspective as I'm coming from the industry, and I personally believe that always the relationship between academic and real research to the industry is a critical one, and I think that the AI era that we live in now takes it to a whole different level, and huge aspects of what we do and what we see in our day-to-day is looking in these models, and instead of just looking on their output, which is a lot of the more trend conversation around what's ethical, where is it valuable, who can create what type of models, and where philosophic question coming to the picture, I'm going to take you to the back of what is the input. Because as maybe some of you thought about it more or yes, the models and the output are only as relevant, as good, as efficient, and as ethical as the data they're actually getting in order to be able to be trained and to be relevant and to be not biased and to be varied, different geography, different communities, different use cases. And that's exactly what I'm doing in my day-to-day. I want to say that although I'm coming from like a company, I'm really not here to give and sell any of you anything, so I want to take that out of the door. The opposite, we have an amazing program for researchers that is all pro bono, so hopefully if any of you would be interested enough and want to use it, you know where to find me in order to make sure that you get free credits to enrich your researches in the way that you need. So 2 quick sentences just so you know who is Bright Data, because maybe some of you haven't heard about us, although Israeli-wise we're pretty big and successful company. The company started 12 years ago. We're located just 40 minutes away in Netanya. We are 500 employees. And we started with this concept of public web data needs to be used for different use cases. So when I'm saying public web data, just for all of us to have an alignment, we are talking about the data that exists in the internet, in the open web. We all use it all the time, of course. But if we want to take that initial internet that was originally created for human, right, like a URL pages with a title and a text and a picture, maybe a video, and want to make it structured and organized in a table so any type of machine, even way before AI can use it, then you need to make it and use different technology just in order to organize, collect it, and make it accessible. The fact that it publics means that you can use it as any user. You don't have to be a registered user. You don't have to click through terms and conditions. You don't have to recognize yourself. Anything that you can see as an incognito user is what was uploaded to the web with the idea that it should be public. Any audience can use it. And if you want to use that for different use cases, that is exactly what the company was built to do. Now, the need of public web data was exist way before AI was like the thing it is now, right? So just for all of us to think for a second, where do we use public web data in our day-to-day. The whole travel industry is relying, right? I'm not sure where exactly you guys book your own flights or travel, but absolutely the way that platforms decide what to offer, at what price, etc., that based on them being able to monitor what's available in the public web. The whole e-commerce world, huge part of research, both academic as well as industry research. The whole world of investment. So many other aspects and industries before AI needed data. But AI changed everything for us as well. And that's because if you think about the different models, and I will start with like the top layer of the big general models, down to any small agentic solution that today trying to solve different situations, they're all relying on three things, if I want to simplify it, of course. One is compute, and we obsess about talking about NVIDIA, right? And what's available and at what price and what countries are going to do about it. Smart engineer that actually building the algorithmic. And eventually huge part goes to the data. And the reason I think it's interesting to this room to think about it is that without making sure that there is good access to good high quality public web data, we don't have the capacity and the opportunity to build the right models and to enable these models to mimic the behavior that we want them to do, because the internet knows us more than, I guess, we know ourselves. So the open web is the biggest data set that humankind ever had and will have, right? At that second, exactly, while we're all sitting here, there is another post, there is another picture, there is another news, there is another, you name it. All this information, which is most of the world information, is actually going to the open web. And when you're starting to think about what part of it is actually critical for models and what really changing the way these models being able to be valuable and to act between us, it's really interesting to look into the growth, both in size as well as in quality, of what data is actually needed. So I was lucky enough to come back to Israel and join Bright Data 3 years ago. Back then, AI in the industry started to grow. No one understood how fast it's going to happen. And at the beginning, we saw some of the big models coming to us and say, we need X amount of data. Sometimes they have a bit more specific request, but nothing too dramatic size-wise compared to anything we saw before. But then very fast, the requirements became, I need all the data in the world because I want to be able to answer answers in the most compelling, relevant, right way. Very fast, we understood that it's not about historical data. Those machines actually need real-time data, right? And now when we talk about agentic, we understand that a solution can't do anything for us without going now to the web and understand what is relevant, what is the weather, can I book my ticket, whatever it is. And it goes down to be very, very specific, obviously not only text, right? Visuals, video. I can just give a heads up that like with the movement of big platform building models to then build robotics and machine solutions, now how all these models supposed to be able to interact and be part of our world without knowing exactly who we are and how we move and communicate and do things in our world, and that's push a lot through videos, okay? So it always goes back to the question of like what machine is going to be able to use what data in order to make it valuable for us as a society. Now, who controls today data? When I think I'm saying public web data, it sometimes might be a little bit confusing because if it's public and we all use it, we can all now open Ynet and see news from this morning, and we can all check weather, and we can all find specific research we were curious about. Why are we still thinking that there is a need to talk about that accessibility to that data? And what are the technology, but not less important, also compliance, ethical, and legal infrastructure that is going to enable to make sure that this data is available? And the reason is exactly what I started with. The internet was structured for human. And if you want now to take all this information, that by the way, the truth of the internet is very different from what we get here in Haifa versus what some answer might be in Tel Aviv, and of course, other side of the world, right? If I'm now looking to something not as critical as like the best pizza place around me, the truth of the internet is going to be very different, and the model is going to give us responses based on what he knows from the open web. But a lot of this information is currently being produced, being held, being technically shared by different platforms. And there are many, many different groups that we can talk about where interesting piece of public web data exists in the web are, but just to try and simplify it, obviously huge part is big tech, right? Big technology companies knows a lot about us, about what we do, and those companies that already became very meaningful part of our life in many different aspects now are in the best position, I believe we all understand it, to build the best models because they have the best, most up-to-date, refreshed data in the world. Governments, right? There is a lot of information that governments collecting and knowing about us, and different platform, and I'm saying it because back then, when we started to look on AI, I think we couldn't understand how much social media will be critical part of the training of the mind of these models. And we do see as a company now how much this is critical, only because it gets to the deep thought of what people think, what people want, what people care about, what make people actually interact with ideas, which is obviously very critical to any aspect of our life, from just selling e-commerce up to democracy and how our upcoming hopeful change will sit based on that data. So on the other one side, we said, where is a lot of this data? And again, the list is much longer. I just want to kind of make you think high level. Obviously, news is a huge part, and research is a huge part. And on the other side, I just want to flag and say, if we believe in a philosophical way that AI is here to stay, and it needs to be able to serve all of us, as people, as citizens, as companies, as governments, what is needed in order to connect the dots? We can't let only the big corporates hold the data, train the models, and just gain more and more access to control these new technology, right, that is now getting to any aspect of life. We want to make sure that real high-quality research can happen, and through my experience in the last 3 years, I can tell you that I'm working with hundreds and hundreds of researchers that are coming to me and sometimes saying, I'm not even sure what can I use, and if I can, what are the limitations, and how can I pay for it, if I do need to pay for it, if I'm not coming to the Bright Initiative because they heard about us in some way. If we're talking about startups, a lot of innovation should come from like smaller companies that understand the problem, even more when we think about what these technology are going to enable in specific industries that we really want to see change, right? Healthcare, the whole industry is now changing and going to look totally different. How can we make sure that these high quality, relevant impact innovation can happen? And also government. I was yesterday, lucky enough maybe, to sit with Bennett to talk about the future of the Israeli high-tech if and when he will become leading this country in a few months. And one of the things that he said is that like Israel can't be in a situation where we are relying on other countries' core data, a model. What are we going to do with the case of Anthropic will happen again? What are we going to do if China is going to prevent to serve the Israeli country for different needs? So there are a lot of big questions around what data is going to enable what bodies to keep build AI in the places that all of us want to make sure that that can happen. Many of them without necessarily having the financial motivation, right? We have a lot of different motivation. One of the things, by the way, you mentioned yesterday that I thought was interesting is how a year from the day that we will have a new government, they want to see how each Israel citizen will have an agent that can just do your operational work for you. Go and submit a new car license, or go and ask for whatever specific request you need to get for your kids to go to a specific school. All this operational stuff that we all hate and takes a lot of time. If we want to do it, we absolutely need to understand, again, how can we train these potential agents. Now, the way we are using today started with the core, train, and understanding of what the models do, and now we have a lot of feedback loop, right? We as a user, the company themselves go back and keep improve to make sure that we will get the best results. Part of what we see as a must happen demand from different AI solution in order to make sure that the models can really behave the way we expect them to, which obviously is a big question, is a lot of real-time live feedback that will come from the actual web. So if we're taking it to the physical space, think about a glass. If a robot tomorrow morning is supposed to be able to hold it, there is a huge difference of, depending if it's a glass or a plastic, right? They need to do a whole different physical behavior. If we take it to the more emotional behavior areas, I'm not sure if any of you saw, there is a I'm not sure if nice, an interesting video of Uber automated car that's starting to talk to a driver that joined the car, and it's talking really, I don't remember the exact wording, but like not what none of us expect from like not a robot and not a taxi driver to talk. And what was very interesting to see is that the model itself changed his whole behavior just because the rider that was there before was very not polite, and he just took his language and kind of transitioned it to the person after. So what are those feedback that needs to happen real time in order to make sure that these models will have the expected, legit, ethical limitation? Now, I want to finish with 3 minutes about policy, because I think we can't ensure access to public web data will remain access without eventually getting into the law field. Models and technology obviously developing much faster, way before regulators even understand what it's going to require them, and I think now we see it more than ever before. And I don't remember who before already spoke about what eventually initiatives of regulation will define how we think about these models behave. But I'm taking a very proactive position globally around the question of ethical guidance for access to data, because we believe that we can't solve the behavior and the way these models are serving us without always going back to the question of availability. And ARDC, Alliance for Responsible Data Collection, it's a non-for-profit organization that we started, and they collaborate with like top institute globally, mainly research, but also some industry player that are just putting for the first time the standards around what ethical data collection means. How on one side we make sure that everyone, not everyone, but many can actually build, train, improve models and solutions through this very strong, robust AI technology. And on the other side, how do we keep the internet safe? How do we make sure that public web data that exists in the web doesn't create any harm? And I don't want to get us too technical, but there are a lot of limitations that we as a company just building our own operation in the last 12 years, so we can really easily explain and share what we are doing in order to keep this monitoring health system when we go and collect these public web data, organize it, and make it accessible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. This was very interesting and I think convincing. I want to ask you about a concept that was very much in discussion a few years ago, but somehow kind of disappeared from the conversation. That was citizen data trusts. And my question is, how do you see this type of governance model, and whether your type of organization in any way relates to it, and is it a good idea even to have citizen data trusts?
So I will quickly respond that there are many different initiatives across the globe that are trying to handle and solve the whole concept of what data should be available to whom and how much we as a citizen can and should hold and trust and decide. I think that the two main answers that are relevant here, one is like, we really need to always be very clear between what's public and non-public. And if we take it to the personal perspective, each and every one of us can decide for any type of information that we are putting in the web, if we are going to make it public or non-public. It can be on your actual research, is it behind the login in a specific website, or is it something that you believe should be shared? And it can be to picture of my 3-year-old daughter, right? Do I want it to be shared or do I want it to be outside of the public web? The other thing on us practically, I will say that anything PII, which is maybe the only definition that's very clear what includes, we are just excluding from the public web data set just to make sure that we are not touching anyone's data in a way that might create risk, because that's not valuable to models. They don't need to know that I'm Dana Mazia, live in Herzliya, today here at Technion. It's not interesting. What they need to have is the full picture in order to understand what, again, the general human behavior looks like. So I hope I answered.
I had a different question about using these data sets for training, which is the increasing reliance on non-text and generated data, and how that relates to the data sets that you guys are providing. More recent models obviously have a lot of the training that occurs happen with non-web data. And do you have any thoughts on how that should be handled or can be handled?
So I think we need to separate 3 groups or types of data. One part is what exists in the public web, and that's where everyone can get very similar access to it through solution like the one Bright Data is doing. The second part is the type of data that any specific organization, researchers, company has, right? And that's where we want to make sure that there are not big enough gaps, because then the gap in the models will be there. And the third one is any type of synthetic data that's now becoming very meaningful and very big part of what the models are actually using once they just don't have enough of the original real human data that they need in order to train. So we started to see a mixture of all 3, and absolutely we as Bright keep saying, like, Google is in the best position to win these path, right? They have all the data, they have compute, and they absolutely have smart engineers. So going back to the first slide that I showed, data aspects is very, very critical, and we still have gaps because different companies holds different part of the internet in the non-public area. Thank you. Thank you.